Welcome to our deep dive into Shinzen Young's The Science of Enlightenment. It's not your typical exploration of Buddhism.
Yeah, it's really Shinzen's personal journey, woven in with all these insights from science and history,
Yeah.
but told in this really relatable voice.
Yeah.
Like he's just sitting there talking to you.
That,
It's really something. So Shinzen presents this really unique perspective,
yeah.
treating enlightenment not as this mystical concept, but as a science.
Right. Something we can study and understand.
Even measure.
Yeah, and measure. And he really doesn't shy away from sharing his own path,
Right.
which,
Which started in academia.
yeah. Did you know he was actually going for his PhD?
Yeah, I think he wanted to be a scholar of Buddhism, actually, really
Yeah.
just studying it. But
But then something happened.
his whole focus shifted,
Yeah.
from theory to practice. It was a really,
A life-altering event.
yeah, involving his mentor.
Yeah.
His mentor's accident really forced him to confront,
The reality of pain and suffering.
the reality of suffering. And that's what sent him to those Japanese monks,
Yeah.
which led to that pivotal experience, his first taste of samadhi.
Yeah, and that completely changed his trajectory.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that experience ignited this passion in him to explore the practical side of Buddhism.
Meditation.
Meditation, exactly.
Right.
And it's so interesting how he blends, his scientific background
Yeah.
with his evolving understanding of meditation to arrive at this unique perspective on enlightenment.
And that leads us to the core of the book.
Yeah.
Where he talks about, these three types of spiritual experience
Thought feeling.
and focus concentration.
Yeah, he argues that a lot of religions emphasize either thought,
Like beliefs and dogma.
yeah, or feeling, like devotion.
Right.
But he thinks they often miss the potential of a focused mind.
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And it's not just Buddhism.
No, not at all.
He points to Christian Hesychia and Islamic zikr.
Taoist show.
All these examples that show that cultivating a focused mind,
It's a universal thing.
it's a universal human endeavor.
It is.
Yeah. So it's not about relaxing then,
Not just relaxing,
but about training the mind.
it's training the mind.
Yeah. And he breaks it down into these three core skills.
Concentration, clarity, equanimity.
Yeah. I love how he compares concentration to weightlifting,
Yeah, it's like strengthening your mind's resistance
to distraction.
to distraction, exactly.
Okay, so then clarity.
Clarity, he dives into sensory clarity. That helps us untangle what he calls the thought vector.
The thought vector. Okay.
Imagine being able to separate the threads of your thoughts and feelings
Oh, wow.
and understand how they work together. That's the kind of clarity he's talking about.
And that brings us to equanimity,
That's a big one.
which he sees as the key to experiencing pain without suffering.
Yeah, it allows us to break free from those negative cycles.
This really resonated with me.
And it's a powerful concept and one that he links back to,
His mentor's accident
That's right. Facing that pain head on is what really pushed him.
to find a way to transform suffering.
Exactly.
Yeah. He even uses this term, the amphibious human,
Yeah, suggesting we can move between these two worlds.
the everyday world and like a deeper reality.
Yeah, more interconnected reality, like
Oh.
frogs moving between land and water.
I find that metaphor very apt.
Me too.
It is a good one.
Shinzen believes that we've kind of forgotten how to access that deeper reality.
But through practices like meditation.
We can rediscover that amphibious nature and become more present and engaged with life.
So it's not about escaping the world,
Uh-huh.
but experiencing it more fully.
Joyfully, yeah.
Which brings us to his concept of flow. This
Flow.
energy of impermanence that can purify and guide us.
He describes different flavors of flow: expansion, contraction, undulation, vibration.
Flavors, okay.
And he suggests that noticing these qualities
Can lead to deeper awareness.
Exactly. It's like tuning into this underlying energy of experience.
Yeah, he uses that analogy of the Alka-Seltzer tablet dissolving in water.
Yeah, that's a good one. He's suggesting that our sense of self is like that tablet.
Well,
And when we immerse it in the waters of awareness,
it starts to dissolve.
it starts to dissolve, and we see that our fixed identity
Is an illusion.
is an illusion. And that dissolution can be challenging,
Yeah.
but also liberating.
So rather than clinging to a rigid sense of self,
Yeah.
we allow ourselves to flow and change.
With the current of experience.
Yeah. This ties back to the concept of the amphibious human, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Being comfortable in the fluidity of both worlds.
Yeah, it's a shift in perspective, a
Yeah.
way of embracing impermanence rather than fearing it.
But he also acknowledges that there are some potential pitfalls on this path.
Oh, yeah, there are.
He talks about the intermediate realm where all these unusual experiences can arise
And powers.
during meditation.
Yeah, and he cautions against getting sidetracked by spiritual materialism, chasing after these powers.
Like for ego gratification.
Yeah, or becoming overwhelmed.
By the experiences themselves.
Right, like getting lost in the side attractions instead of focusing on the main path.
Exactly.
He advocates for a really grounded approach, emphasizing those core principles. Concentration, clarity, and equanimity. And this leads to what he calls the awkward intermediate zone.
The awkward intermediate zone. Okay.
Yeah, this is where old coping mechanisms are dissolving.
But new ones haven't quite formed.
It can be a bit of a
purgatory.
Well, he doesn't sugarcoat this part of the journey.
No?
He compares it to the idea of purgatory in Christian mysticism.
Right, yeah. Where there's that sense of being in between states.
Yeah, it can be very unsettling. But he does offer some practical advice.
Like what?
For navigating this phase. Like affirming positive emotions and reconstructing a new sense of self.
Through practice.
Through practice, yeah. Like loving kindness.
Loving kindness, yeah. Sounds like it takes
a lot of courage.
A lot of courage and self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
To navigate that in-between space.
It does, but Shinzen emphasizes that it's a necessary stage.
Yeah.
A kind of crucible where we can shed those old patterns.
And emerge transformed.
Yeah.
Okay, so this concept of zero is where it gets really mind-bending for me.
Zero is a tough one.
It's where expansion and contraction, yes and no, cancel each other out.
Yeah, it's like reaching a point of ultimate balance.
He draws a parallel with modern mathematics,
right,
suggesting we don't actually experience zero directly.
But we experience the afterglow.
The afterglow.
That sense of fulfillment and peace.
Yeah.
Think of it as a state of pure potentiality.
Where all those dualities dissolve.
Yeah.
And he uses that famous Zen story about the dog and Buddha nature to illustrate this.
Both yes and no can be correct answers.
When viewed from the perspective of zero.
Yeah, it's about transcending the limitations of our usual way of thinking.
Right. And this concept of zero leads him to his happiest thought.
Which brings science into the equation.
Tell me more about this happiest thought.
Shinzen proposes that science and meditation could converge.
Okay.
To create a whole new understanding of enlightenment.
Wow.
And even develop technologies to facilitate it.
Wait, technologies for enlightenment?
It's a bold vision, but that's what he's proposing.
This I have to hear.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. He envisions a future where neuroscience helps us understand how the brain creates the experience of self.
So we're not just talking about meditation apps then?
No, this is something far more radical.
Okay.
He points to examples like Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor's stroke experience where her sense of self dissolved.
Oh, wow.
And the condition of athemorphia where individuals lack a sense of self.
Okay, so he's suggesting we can learn from these neurological phenomena to deepen our understanding of consciousness.
Yeah.
And potentially develop new technologies based on these insights.
Yeah, he really believes that.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing.
He's very careful to acknowledge the ethical implications,
Yeah, of course.
And potential for misuse. But he really maintains this optimistic outlook for the future.
Well, this is definitely a lot to unpack. But I'm eager to hear more about these potential technologies.
Yeah.
And what this convergence of science and spirituality might look like. I think our listeners will be fascinated by this too.
Well, that brings us to some fascinating possibilities that Shinzen explores. Like, for instance, a consciousness meter.
The consciousness meter, okay.
A device that can measure an individual's level of awareness.
Oh, so like a spiritual Fitbit.
Yeah, almost like a spiritual Fitbit.
I'm picturing everyone walking around with these consciousness meters trying to outdo each other on their enlightenment score.
I know, right?
But seriously, though, that's a pretty radical idea.
Yeah.
What else does he propose?
He also envisions things like virtual reality simulations of enlightenment experiences.
Oh.
So you could get a glimpse of those profound states without years of dedicated practice.
That's really pushing the boundary, but wouldn't that be like a shortcut?
He's cautious about that.
Skipping over the actual work.
He emphasizes that simulations shouldn't replace the practice, but rather inspire people.
To show them what's possible.
To show them what's possible, exactly.
And encourage them to embark on their own journey.
That's right.
That makes sense. It's like offering a taste of something extraordinary.
Yeah, to spark curiosity and motivation.
Exactly. But he doesn't stop there.
He doesn't.
He also explores the potential of transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, to temporarily disrupt brain activity.
Associated with the sense of self.
I've heard of TMS being used for things like treating depression.
Okay.
How would it apply to enlightenment?
Shinzen suggests that by disrupting the brain's normal functioning, TMS could give people a shift in perspective,
Okay.
a glimpse of a different way of being.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
It sounds almost like a technological cheat code for enlightenment.
Yeah, it kind of does. But again, he's careful to acknowledge the ethical complexities.
Yeah.
It's not about forcing enlightenment on anyone,
Right.
but creating conditions for it to emerge.
I can see how this raises a lot of questions.
What about the potential for misuse?
It's a big concern.
Could these technologies be used for manipulation or control?
Shinzen doesn't shy away from these concerns.
No, he doesn't.
He really emphasizes the need for responsible development, ethical guidelines,
Yeah.
open dialogue, and careful consideration of the impacts.
It sounds like navigating these uncharted waters will require a lot of wisdom and discernment.
Absolutely.
And this is a conversation we need to have as a society.
We do.
His vision is ultimately about using technology to amplify human potential,
Not to replace the inner work,
not to replace it.
but to support it.
So it's not about becoming dependent on technology for enlightenment,
Right.
but rather using it as a tool to support our own efforts.
Exactly.
And it's about ensuring that these technologies are used in a way that benefits humanity as a whole.
Benefits everyone. That's really the key.
This is such a fascinating and thought-provoking topic. I'm really curious to hear more about the specific ways in which Shinzen envisions science and meditation intersecting in the future.
Me too. It's really fascinating stuff.
Well, one of his more concrete ideas is the development of a consciousness meter.
Right. A device that could actually measure someone's level of awareness.
Yeah, almost like a spiritual Fitbit.
Exactly.
I can see that being both helpful and potentially problematic.
Yeah. I mean,
On the one hand, it could provide valuable feedback.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it could lead to comparisons and competition.
which kind of goes against the whole point.
Yeah, exactly.
Shinzen acknowledges that reducing these complex experiences to data points has limitations.
Yeah.
He emphasizes that any technology should be used for self-awareness,
Right.
not as a measure of spiritual worth.
That makes sense. What about his ideas for virtual reality simulations of enlightenment experiences?
Oh, that's a fascinating one.
How does he envision those being used?
He suggests that these simulations could be powerful for people who are new to meditation
Okay.
or skeptical of its benefits,
Yeah.
you know? Imagine experiencing a taste of those profound states without years of dedicated practice.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
But I wonder, couldn't it also create a false sense of achievement,
He's cautious about that.
leading people to believe they've reached enlightenment through a virtual experience?
He stresses that these simulations shouldn't be seen as a replacement
Right.
for the actual practice.
Okay.
It's like watching a cooking show
Oh,
versus actually learning to cook.
that's a great analogy. You might get a sense of what it's like.
But you don't actually develop the skill.
You don't develop the skill. Yeah, that
Exactly.
makes sense.
You have to put in the work
So these simulations are really just a way to inspire,
to inspire and motivate people.
show them what's possible,
Show them what's possible.
encourage them to embark on their own journey.
Your own journey, exactly.
Well, this concept of using transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS,
TMS.
to temporarily disrupt the brain activity associated with the sense of self
Yeah,
is both fascinating and a bit unsettling.
it is.
Can you elaborate on how Shinzen sees this being used ethically and responsibly?
He emphasizes that it would be a carefully controlled experience.
Yeah.
Not something to be taken lightly.
Okay.
It's about creating a temporary shift
Right.
in perspective.
Allowing individuals to experience a glimpse of a different way of being.
Exactly.
It sounds like a powerful tool for exploration and insight,
It is.
but I can also see how it could be misused.
You're right.
What are his thoughts on that?
Shinzen is very aware of those concerns. He stresses the need for clear ethical guidelines, informed consent,
Of course.
ongoing dialogue about the risks and benefits.
It sounds like a lot of responsibility comes with this.
It does.
His overall vision for the future is quite inspiring, though.
It is.
It's exciting to imagine a world where science and spirituality collaborate to enhance human well-being.
Yeah, to work together.
Yeah.
I think one of Shinzen's most valuable contributions is his ability to spark these conversations, challenge assumptions, and expand our understanding of what's possible.
He's not just a teacher, he's a visionary,
He is.
inviting us to imagine a future where science and spirituality can work together to enhance human well-being.
To enhance human well-being, exactly.
Before we move on, I want to touch on one more key concept from the book.
Okay.
The role of impermanence in our lives.
Oh, yes, impermanence.
Shinzen often refers to impermanence, or anicca in Pali, as the fundamental energy of the universe.
A fundamental G?
He encourages us to embrace this constant flow of change rather than resist it.
Which is what most of us do.
Yeah, we try to hold on.
I do.
I love the way he describes impermanence as a purifying force.
Yeah.
Like a river that's constantly cleansing itself.
It's a beautiful image.
He uses all these analogies
He does.
to illustrate this concept.
Like a flickering candle flame.
Yeah.
The ebb and flow of the tides.
He even compares it to the process of digestion.
Oh, yeah.
Where food is broken down and transformed into energy.
Yeah, it's a constant process of change and renewal.
So it's not just about things ending, but also about new beginning. About constant transformation.
Exactly.
And renewal.
And he suggests that by surrendering to this flow of impermanence, we can access a deeper sense of freedom and liberation.
It's about letting go of our attachment to things staying the same.
Yeah.
And embracing the ever-changing nature of reality.
Which can be scary for a lot of people.
It can be.
He even describes different flavors of impermanence, like expansion, contraction, undulation, and vibration, encouraging us to pay attention to these subtle qualities.
Qualities of our experience.
Of experience, exactly.
It's like tuning into the rhythm of life, the constant dance of creation and destruction.
And death and rebirth.
And he reminds us that impermanence is not just a philosophical concept.
It's not.
It's a lived reality.
A lived reality.
That we can experience in every moment.
In every moment.
This idea of impermanence seems so central to his teachings.
It is.
It's like a foundation.
A foundation, yeah.
For understanding concepts like flow and even no self.
It is. It's really the ground from which everything else grows.
It is a powerful message for our listeners to ponder.
It is indeed. And it leads us to the next crucial concept. In Shinzen's teachings, the idea of no self, or anatta in Pali.
This is where things get really interesting and perhaps a bit challenging for some.
Yeah, this is a big one.
No self.
Essentially, Shinzen's saying that the self
that we think we are,
the self that we cling to, is more of a construct
than a solid entity.
Right. It's not that we don't exist,
but
that our sense of self is more fluid and interconnected than we realize.
More fluid and interconnected,
He uses the analogy of a wave arising from the ocean. The wave appears distinct, but it's inseparable from the ocean.
That's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
It makes me think about the interconnectedness of all things.
Yes.
How we're all part of something much larger than ourselves.
We are.
And he suggests that letting go of our attachment to a separate self,
this illusion of a separate self,
can be liberating.
Yeah, can be very liberating.
Allowing us to experience a deeper sense of connection.
And freedom.
But letting go of the self can sound scary.
It can.
Isn't that a big part of who we are?
Well, we think it is.
But he's not saying that we cease to exist.
He's not saying that we don't exist.
He's saying that our sense of self is more fluid
and interconnected than we realize.
Okay.
And he uses that analogy of a wave to kind of illustrate that.
Right.
The wave appears to be separate, but it's not.
So it's not about annihilation,
Yeah.
but rather a shift in perspective.
A shift in perspective.
He explains that the self we cling to is often a source of suffering, a limitation.
A limitation.
And prevents us from experiencing
the stillness of reality.
So by releasing our grip on that limited sense of self,
we open ourselves up to something much greater.
More expansive.
More expansive and interconnected.
He offers practices like meditation and mindfulness.
To help us understand this.
Not through intellectualizing, but through direct experience.
Direct experience, exactly.
It sounds like a gradual process of letting go.
Of shedding layers.
Shedding layers.
This is identification.
Opening to a new way of experiencing the world.
And it's not just for those solitary meditators either.
Okay.
He says we can bring this understanding into our relationships, our work, and our everyday lives.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings.
Yeah.
Which naturally leads to greater compassion.
Greater compassion and understanding.
And that ties in with his emphasis on loving kindness practice.
Absolutely.
Yande.
Cultivating compassion becomes much easier.
When we see through the illusion of separateness.
When we realize that we are all interconnected.
We are all interconnected.
Yeah.
This conversation's already given me so much to think about.
Me too.
And I know our listeners are eager to hear more about Shinzen's unique approach to meditation.
I think so.
And how he makes these complex concepts relatable,
and accessible.
he's a master storyteller,
Yes.
weaving together personal anecdotes, scientific insights,
And humor
and even humor.
to illuminate these teachings.
I'm especially curious about those anecdotes.
Yeah, he's got some great stories.
He seems to have quite a knack
He does.
for sharing stories that make you laugh and think at the same time.
Yeah, he's got a way with words.
He's very open about his own struggles and foibles,
He is.
which makes him incredibly relatable.
Incredibly relatable, yeah. For instance, he describes himself as
Rimpy, agitated, impatient.
wimpy, agitated, and impatient.
Not exactly the stereotype of a serene Zen master.
Not exactly.
I love that.
Me too.
It makes these teachings feel more human,
Yeah.
more attainable,
Yeah, more down to earth.
for those of us who aren't naturally inclined towards serenity.
Right, most of us.
Exactly.
And he's not afraid to share those humorous anecdotes.
About his experiences.
Like the time he tried sumo wrestling
Oh my
with
God.
Japanese monks.
Oh, I have to hear that story.
It's a good one.
It sounds hilarious.
It is. It really highlights his playful approach.
To the practice.
Yeah.
His willingness to laugh at himself.
Not take things too seriously.
That's refreshing. So often, spirituality can feel so serious
It can.
and heavy.
Heavy.
He reminds us that it can be joyful
And humorous.
and even humorous.
Yeah.
Well, I think our listeners are in for a treat.
I think so too.
I can't wait to dive into some of those stories and see how he uses them to illustrate these profound teachings.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Speaking of enlightening, there's one more concept I want to touch on before we move on. His exploration of the realm of power.
Ah, the realm of power.
It sounds a bit mysterious
It is a bit mysterious.
and perhaps a bit daunting.
It can be.
What is the realm of power?
Well, it's that stage in meditation
Okay.
where unusual experiences and abilities can arise.
So we're talking about things like visions, psychic phenomena,
Yeah.
maybe even supernatural powers.
He doesn't rule those out, but he's very clear that those are not the goal.
They're more like side effects.
Side effects
It can occur.
along the way.
But it's easy to get distracted by those side effects,
Oh, it's very easy.
especially if they seem exciting or powerful.
They can be very seductive.
He cautions against getting caught up in
What do you call it?
spiritual materialism.
Spiritual materialism.
Hey,
Seeking powers or experiences
just for their own sake.
for their own sake. Yeah.
So it's about staying focused on the ultimate goal of awakening,
exactly.
not getting sidetracked by the allure of these extraordinary experiences.
It's like getting lost in the amusement park
Yeah.
instead of continuing on your journey
Right.
to your destination.
To your destination.
Yeah,
He uses the analogy of a plumb line
that's a good one.
to illustrate the most direct path
The most direct path.
to the source
Yeah, straight down. Don't get caught up
in the side attractions.
with side attractions.
Yeah.
He reminds us that true power lies,
Not in extraordinary abilities,
but in the cultivation of wisdom,
passion,
compassion,
and skillful action.
and skillful action.
And those are qualities that we can all cultivate.
we can all cultivate those.
Regardless of whether we have any special powers,
Exactly.
it's about developing our inner strength
Yeah.
and using it to benefit ourselves and others.
To benefit ourselves and others. Exactly.
And it's those qualities
those inner qualities.
that ultimately lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
That's what he says.
He doesn't shy away from acknowledging the challenges and the potential pitfalls,
He doesn't.
but he also emphasizes the transformative power of these practices.
Yeah, he's very encouraging in that way.
Speaking of transformative power, I want to touch on one more key concept
Okay.
from the book. Shinzen's unique perspective on the nature of self.
Ah, yes, no self.
It's a topic that's often debated
It is. It's a big one.
and pondered in spiritual circles.
Yeah, people love to debate about the self.
What is the self?
Shinzen explains that the self we typically identify with,
Yeah, that we cling to,
that we think we are,
is more of a construct.
than a solid, unchanging entity.
So it's not that we don't exist,
Right.
but rather that our sense of self is more fluid
More fluid
and interconnected than we might realize.
than we might realize.
Okay, he's used that analogy of the wave again.
The wave in the ocean.
The wave in the ocean
Yeah.
to illustrate this concept.
Yeah.
The wave appears distinct.
But it's inseparable from the vastness of the ocean.
That's a beautiful image. It makes me think about the interconnectedness of all things.
Yes.
How we're all part of something much larger than ourselves.
We are.
And he suggests that letting go of our attachment
To that illusion of a separate self.
can be liberating,
Be liberating.
allowing us to experience a deeper sense of connection
Deeper connection.
and freedom.
And freedom.
And freedom. But letting go of the self, it sounds a little scary.
It can be.
Is that a big part of who we are?
Well, we think it is.
But he's not saying that we cease to exist.
No, he's not saying we don't exist.
Yeah.
He's just saying that our sense of self is more fluid.
And interconnected.
Yeah.
We realize.
Than we realize.
Okay.
He uses that analogy of a wave.
Right.
To kind of illustrate that.
Yeah.
The wave appears to be separate, but it's not. It's part of this larger whole.
So it's not about annihilation.
No.
But rather a shift in perspective.
A shift in perspective.
He explains that the self we cling to is often a source of suffering.
It is.
A limitation that prevents us from experiencing
the fullness of reality.
So by releasing our grip on that limited sense of self,
we open ourselves up to something much greater.
More expansive.
And interconnected.
He offers practices like meditation and mindfulness.
To help us understand this concept.
Not through intellectualizing.
No.
But through direct experience.
Direct experience, exactly.
It sounds like a gradual process of letting go.
Of shedding layers. Of identification.
Opening to a new way of experiencing the world.
Exactly.
And it's not just for those solitary meditators either.
He says it's not. He says we can bring this understanding into our relationships, our work, our everyday lives.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings. Which naturally leads to greater compassion.
Greater compassion and understanding.
And that ties in with his emphasis on loving-kindness practice.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it?
Cultivating compassion becomes much easier.
When we see through the illusion of separateness.
When we realize that we're all interconnected.
Yeah. Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, exploring Shinzen's background and some of the core concepts
and then the basic idea
from the Science of Enlightenment.
Right.
Now let's dive into the practical side.
The how-to.
The how-to. What specific practices does he offer for cultivating those qualities of wisdom, compassion, and skillful action?
Well, he doesn't present a one-size-fits-all approach.
No.
He emphasizes that what's most skillful will vary depending on the individual and the situation.
So it's not about following a rigid set of rules.
No, not at all.
But finding what works.
For each person.
On their own unique path.
On their unique path.
Yeah.
He describes it as upaya, or skillful means. It's about using whatever tools or techniques are most effective in guiding individuals toward awakening.
So being adaptable.
Being adaptable, yeah.
He also talks about the importance of adapting our methods.
As we go.
Letting go of what no longer serves us.
Right.
And embracing new approaches as we grow.
He encourages that flexibility. He reminds us that the path is not static.
Right. It's an ongoing process.
It is an ongoing process.
So it's about being open to experimentation.
Experimentation, yeah.
Finding what resonates with us at each stage.
At each stage, exactly.
And it's about aligning our actions with our values.
Yeah, making sure our intentions
are good.
Are rooted in compassion and a genuine desire to benefit others.
That reminds me of something he said about the awkward intermediate zone.
Ugh. Ah, yes, the awkward intermediate zone.
Where old coping mechanisms dissolve.
We do.
But new ones haven't fully formed.
I haven't quite taken shape yet.
Right.
How do we navigate that?
Yeah, how do we navigate that?
Well, he offers some practical advice.
Like what?
Like affirming positive emotions.
What?
Cultivating loving kindness.
Yeah.
And reconstructing a new sense of self through practice.
It sounds like a delicate balance.
It is.
Letting go of old patterns.
Yeah.
While also building a new foundation.
Yeah.
For experiencing the world.
He doesn't shy away from the difficulties, but he emphasizes that it's a necessary stage, a time of profound transformation.
Like a metamorphosis.
He compares it to the Christian concept of purgatory, a period of purification.
It makes sense that a period of transition would involve some discomfort, even a sense of disorientation.
You might feel a bit lost, and that's okay.
Yeah.
He offers practices like loving kindness meditation to help us navigate those challenging emotions.
Cultivate a sense of warmth.
Warmth and acceptance.
Towards ourselves and others.
Towards ourselves and others.
That sounds incredibly valuable.
It is.
Especially during times of uncertainty.
Uncertainty and change.
Yeah.
It's about meeting ourselves with kindness as we navigate those twists and turns.
Okay, let's talk about his actual approach to meditation.
Okay.
What makes his teachings stand out?
Well, he's known for his emphasis on see, hear, feel.
See, hear, feel.
encouraging practitioners to pay close attention
Okay.
to the sensory experience.
So being present in the body.
Being present in the body, noticing the sensations, the sounds.
Even the visual phenomena.
Even the visual phenomena that arise.
So it's about untangling those threads.
Untangling those threads.
To see them more clearly.
To see them more clearly.
And gain greater control.
Over how we experience them.
He's not advocating for suppressing those thoughts and feelings.
No.
But for developing
a different relationship.
With them.
With them, exactly.
I'm curious about how he incorporates this concept of flow into his meditation techniques.
Oh, that's a good question.
How does he guide people to tap into that purifying and guiding energy?
He encourages practitioners to pay attention to those different flavors of flow.
Expansion, contraction, undulation, vibration.
Contraction, undulation, vibration. Noticing how those qualities show up.
Show up in the body.
In the body and mind.
So it's not just about observing the breath or focusing on a mantra.
No.
But also tuning into those subtle energetic shifts.
Those energetic shifts, exactly.
And by noticing those shifts, we gain a deeper understanding of impermanence.
Of impermanence, exactly.
He also talks about flow as a guide, doesn't he?
He does.
Like a compass.
Like a compass pointing us in the right direction.
So if we're feeling resistance or agitation during meditation,
it could be a sign
that we need to adjust.
That you need to adjust something.
Our approach. It sounds like his approach to meditation
is very much in line
with his overall philosophy.
With his overall philosophy, embracing impermanence.
Cultivating clarity.
And ultimately realizing our true nature.
You know, one of the things that struck me about Shinzen's teachings is his emphasis on integrating these practices.
Into everyday life.
Into everyday life.
Right.
He doesn't see enlightenment as something we achieve in isolation.
No, not at all.
But rather something we embody.
In our interactions with the world.
So it's about being more present in our relationships?
Yeah.
In our work? Even our leisure activities?
Even just walking down the street.
Yeah.
You can bring this awareness to everything you do.
He even talks about the spiritual potential of everyday experiences.
He does. Like
enjoying a meal or listening to music.
Yeah.
Right.
He reminds us that enlightenment isn't about transcending the ordinary.
It's about experiencing it.
With extraordinary awareness.
That's beautifully put.
So it's not about escaping from the world, but about finding ways to infuse our daily lives with greater presence.
Presence and intention.
Presence and intention, exactly.
I think that's a message that resonates with a lot of people.
I think so too.
We're all looking for ways
to find more meaning.
To find more meaning and connection.
Yeah.
In a world that often feels
chaotic.
Chaotic and overwhelming.
Overwhelming.
Shinzen's teachings offer a way to navigate
those challenges
with greater clarity, compassion, and resilience.
That's what he says.
He also talks about the importance of ongoing practice and refinement.
It's not a one-time achievement.
Right.
It's a lifelong journey.
Of learning and growth.
Of learning and growth, exactly.
So it's about approaching the path with a sense of adventure.
Adventure, yeah.
A willingness to step outside our comfort zones.
Yeah.
And explore new territories.
New territories of consciousness.
He often compares the journey to climbing a mountain.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Acknowledging that there will be times
when the path is steep and treacherous.
But he also reminds us that the view from the summit
is breathtakingly beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've explored his approach to meditation.
We have.
And his emphasis on integrating those practices into everyday life.
Right. Bringing it all together.
But one of the most intriguing aspects
of the book,
of the Science of Enlightenment, is his exploration of the intersection
between science and spirituality.
That's what really sets his work apart. His willingness to embrace both ancient wisdom and modern scientific insights.
Yeah, he's not afraid to bring those two worlds together.
It's a bold approach.
It is.
And it raises all sorts of fascinating questions.
It does.
Like, how can we use scientific methods to study something as subjective
and elusive
as enlightenment?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people would say you can't.
But he thinks we can.
He thinks we can.
He believes that neuroscience has the potential to unlock
some of the mysteries
of consciousness.
Yeah, how the brain creates the experience
of self
and the world.
I imagine that's a controversial idea.
Oh, yeah.
For some.
Especially for people who view science and spirituality as incompatible.
As separate.
Yeah.
He acknowledges those tensions, but he also sees the potential.
The potential for collaboration.
He's not suggesting that science can replace spirituality,
Yeah.
but rather that they can complement
And enrich each other.
So we're not just talking about using brain scans.
To measure brainwave activity.
Right.
He's talking about something far more profound.
Okay.
About unraveling the nature of consciousness itself.
This brings us back to his ideas about developing technologies to enhance
our spiritual development.
Yeah,
he sees a future where science and technology can support our awakening.
So we're not just talking about meditation apps.
And brainwave monitors.
But something far more transformative.
Far more transformative. He talks about the possibility of developing consciousness meters that could give us feedback on our level of awareness.
Okay.
And even virtual reality simulations of enlightenment experiences.
It's a bold vision.
It is.
One that raises a lot of ethical considerations.
He acknowledges those concerns.
He emphasizes the importance of using these technologies
responsibly
and
ethically.
It's clear that he's not advocating for a technological shortcut.
No,
enlightenment.
But for a thoughtful approach.
That honors both the power of science and the depth of spiritual practice.
Yeah, the two have to work together.
It sounds like we need to approach these advancements with a blend of curiosity and caution. Ensuring that they're used to benefit humanity.
To benefit all beings.
And not to exploit or manipulate.
He advocates for open dialogue and careful consideration.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is.
But it's also crucial to proceed with wisdom.
And discernment.
I think one of his most valuable contributions is his ability to spark these conversations.
And get people thinking.
To challenge us.
Yeah, to challenge our assumptions.
And expand our understanding of what's possible.
That's possible, yeah.
He's not just a teacher, he's a visionary.
He is a visionary.
Inviting us to imagine a future.
Where science and spirituality work together.
To enhance human well-being.
To create a better world.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what really brings Shinzen's book to life? Is those
stories he tells?
Yeah, he's a great storyteller.
He's very open.
He is.
About his own, struggles and experiences.
He doesn't shy away from sharing those awkward or even humorous moments.
Right. He even describes himself
as a wimpy, agitated, impatient.
Wimpy, agitated, impatient kind of guy.
Not exactly what you picture when you think of a
meditation master.
Yeah, a Zen master.
It's refreshing.
It is. It makes it feel like
anyone can do this.
Yeah, anyone can do this. You don't have to be some kind of perfect, serene being. Remember that story about the giant insects?
Oh, yeah. What was that about?
He was walking to class in grad school, and suddenly he starts seeing these giant insects everywhere.
Like a hallucination.
Well, it was one of his early encounters with what he calls the intermediate realm, that stage where unusual experiences can arise.
During meditation.
Yeah, and he talks about how those experiences can be both fascinating and potentially frightening.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a bit unsettling.
Right, and it would be easy to get swept up in those phenomena.
To get attached to those experiences.
Yeah, or even to get scared and run away from them.
So how did he deal with it?
He used mindfulness techniques to work with those visions.
Okay.
Observing them with curiosity and equanimity.
So even those bizarre experiences can be opportunities for growth.
Exactly, if we approach them with the right mindset.
I like that.
He also shares stories about his interactions with his teachers.
His mentors.
Yeah, emphasizing the importance of guidance on the path.
Like his time studying with Sasaki Roshi.
Yes, Sasaki Roshi, he was a renowned Zen master.
What did Shinzen say about him?
He described Roshi as a kind of spiritual travel agent.
A spiritual travel agent, okay.
Providing reusable round-trip tickets between heaven and hell.
That's a great analogy.
It really captures the paradoxical nature of the spiritual journey.
The ups and downs.
The ups and downs, the moments of transcendence, and those moments of deep challenge.
Yeah, and those sort of aren't just entertaining.
No, they really help to illustrate those complex concepts.
Yeah, make them more understandable.
He uses those personal experiences to connect with readers.
On a human level.
On a human level, yeah. Showing that he's not some distant guru.
Right.
He's a fellow traveler on this path.
We're all in this together.
We are.
Navigating the complexities of life.
Yeah.
And seeking greater understanding.
That's the journey, isn't it?
It is. He also weaves in these historical references.
He does. He loves to show how these practices have been explored across cultures and throughout time.
So it's not just a Buddhist thing.
No, not at all. He talks about contemplative traditions in Christianity, Islam, Taoism.
Hinduism,
yeah. highlighting that universal yearning.
For awakening.
For awakening, yep, for connection with something greater than ourselves.
And he doesn't shy away from citing scientific research.
Oh, he embraces it.
To support his claims.
He draws on studies in neuroscience, psychology.
All sorts of fields.
He's building bridges between different ways of knowing.
Showing how science and spirituality can work together.
Yeah, they can complement and enrich each other.
I think that's one of the most compelling aspects of his work.
Me too. It's that willingness to embrace a more holistic view.
To see the interconnectedness of everything.
Exactly.
He's not asking us to choose between science or spirituality.
Yeah, right.
But to find a way to integrate them.
Yeah, to bring them together.
It's like he's saying, let's use all the tools we have.
To explore the mysteries.
To explore the mysteries of consciousness and the human experience.
And that's what this deep dive has been all about, hasn't it?
It has. Exploring Shinzen Young's The Science of Enlightenment.
This book challenges us to really question our assumptions about enlightenment.
Yeah, it's not about escaping the world.
We're becoming some kind of superhuman.
It's about being more present.
Yeah.
More engaged.
More alive.
Right here, right now.
In the midst of our everyday lives.
And it's not about denying our humanness,
no,
but about embracing it.
Yeah, with all its imperfections.
He even talks about how his meditation practice
helped him manage his own
wimpy, agitated, impatient tendencies.
He shows us that it's okay to not be perfect.
We're all works in progress.
We are all works in progress.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Progress, not perfection.
So it's not about achieving some distant goal.
No, it's about transforming our relationship with this moment.
With our experience.
With ourselves.
And it's not a solitary pursuit.
Right. We can support each other.
On this journey.
Sharing our experiences. Offering encouragement.
Creating a more compassionate and understanding world.
That's the vision, isn't it?
It is. The Science of Enlightenment is a rich and multifaceted exploration of these ideas.
It's a book that challenges us.
To question our assumptions.
To expand our perspectives.
And to embrace the transformative potential of this ancient wisdom.
In a modern context.
If this deep dive has piqued your interest,
I encourage you to check out Shinzen Young's book,
The Science of Enlightenment.
It's a journey worth taking.
And remember, the path to enlightenment is an ongoing one.
It is.
Full of twists and turns, challenges and triumphs.
But ultimately,
leads us
to a deeper understanding
of who we truly are.
And to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.